us down to a 4.21 gross and a 4.96 net. And it's a reduction of about $143,000 or 0.38 of a percent. So just shy of a 0.5%. Brought the budget down, and those are, so that was, I thought that was pretty good news to open with today. That changes the breakdown of how the 4.21 as opposed to 4.59 was made up. Specifically, it lowers the portion of benefits, the portion of the full increased benefits from 0.73 to 0.51. And then everything kind of adjusts accordingly based on that. It did bring supplies up down to 0.52 from 0.68. So those were the two biggest movers. Supplies is where electricity is categorized. That's why it's hitting the supplies line. So again, 4.21 gross. And then if you add in that decrease of revenue, 0.75, we're at a 4.96 net budget.
Any questions?
If that not net budget was 4.96.
I wish she had more good news to share tonight, but that's what we have. So the other thing we talked about, even though it's not a formal discussion on the agenda, but we thought it was important since we spent last meeting really focused on staffing. There's at least one non-staffing item that we want to bring out. It was shared briefly during the proposal, but we feel like it's important to bring it to your attention, and that's capital. We talk about that most years, I would think, since I've been here, and so it's okay. I'd like to let Kim go a little bit deeper into the capital budget proposal and see if there are any questions related to that.
So this budget includes the capital, not only includes the capital reserve, but it also includes any equipment. So under that line, we see capital, probably should say capital and equipment. That's an increase of $148,000 over last year, or 12.16%. And that makes up a capital capital and equipment of 0.39% of the 4.21. So it's kind of a big piece of that 4.21. But what's in there is the capital reserve at 2% of the 39 million, which equates to roughly $778,000. And that's in a little bit, I'll tell you how those funds are proposed to be allocated. But also in there is, and actually for last year, we had budgeted at roughly 1.84 instead of 2%. So there's that increase up to the 2%. And then also there is some equipment in here. We need a new dishwasher for the food service at Coggin-Chog, so that's in there for $14,000. Required new for next year is basketball shot clocks, required by CRHS, so that's $7,000. We have an outdoor track, high jump, and vault that needed covers. That's $5,000. New defibrillators in the schools they are expiring. That's $4,000. We have some music keyboards for Coggin-Chog and music class for $3,500. And then in that line is our software renewals, and which makes up a significant amount. So that's how we get to that amount under capital of the 1.365 million. In that 778,000, which does change as the budget changes, that 2% amount changes. But originally proposed to be the turf replacement in the summer of 23. So we had 565,000 saved for our turf. And we need additional. That was 10 years ago, I think, when that estimate was how we started saving for it, which was a great thing to do. But we do need about another $80,000 in order to be able to finish that up. So that's a request in here. We're hoping to get it done in 23. If we can't, the vendor will hold us off until 24 and honor the price if we give a down payment. So if this 80 goes in, we can do it all in 23. If it doesn't, we can submit a down payment and then plan on doing the rest in the following year. Picket lane paving phase 2. This is going to require a vote at the next meeting to, if you agree, to allocate the culvert grant funds to this picket lane paving, because they both fell under the same bonding, the 6.9 bonding project, we have the ability to, we're not going to spend that because the grant came about after we bonded. And then now we can just allocate that towards another project in the bonding with board vote. So if you choose to do that, the paving, which we're thinking will be about $700,000 for this phase 2. We'll probably only have to save about 300 because 400, roughly 300 to 400 will be coming from the culvert. I've asked for an exact amount from the state, but I haven't heard. It's into the, I guess, the treasurer in order to, so we should be getting it soon, but I don't know how much that'll be. It was an up to a 50% amount. So I can't even kind of compute it. But for this purpose, I think 300 is sufficient to put in there. The next thing was the chiller and chill pumps at Strong. That's 243,000, which I said the last meeting isn't enough, but it's a start. It's a big start. They are 27 years old and their lifespan is 20 years. And since we put in our new gas-fired boilers recently, it's we've been noticing a lot of aging and a lot of issues with the equipment, the chill pumps that circulate the glycol. They've been having quite a few hiccups lately. So that's something we're going to need to address. And you'll remember we had the one here at Coggins go down, but we had the ARPA funds that we could use for that. We don't have that for this, so we do need to save for it. And then the last thing, and it was well, not the last thing, but the last project thing is a variable frequency drives, which I talked about last time. It regulates indoor air quality. And that's kind of risen up to being a priority item. And then we have unanticipated building and maintenance, 100,000, which is what we did last year. And we've spent almost all of that on unanticipated building maintenance and repairs. So I'm proposing that we do another 100,000, especially with the fact that we just still haven't put any money aside for anything for Lyman. If something were to go wrong, we need to have those funds. Plus, this also gives us the money that if the Strong chiller goes down and we hadn't fully funded it, that would help us there too. And then we're talking next year, but next year, just so you know, we're going to be looking at the boiler and chiller pumps at Coggins. So as we're looking at a Strong for this year, that's going to be an issue that's going to come up for next year. Any questions on capital?
Looking at the turf replacement for 2023, that 80,000. Could we hold off on the turf and allocate the 80,000 to unanticipated?
Yes, we absolutely can. But we would sort of.
What's the down payment they want though?
Well, we have half. We can do the down payment. They want the half, and then they will hold us with that price into 24. But if we don't get this 80,000 in the 24-25 budget, then we don't have the money to do it, and we've already given the down payment.
So you're talking about changing the 100,000 to 80,
yeah.
80 and taking the 80 out.
Putting the 180 in the unanticipated.
Oh, 180.
We do believe that the turf will last us one more year. And Lindsay knows just from going to the building committee meetings, but again, without knowing if the 24-25 budget would include the 80,000, we're going to pay this vendor $300 and something thousand and then not have enough people. So that's just caution. And if we don't give the down payment, that's fine, but we're looking at an increase in price.
So how about the opposite? If we leave it as proposed and for whatever reason decide not to do it this summer, is that 80,000 available in like an unanticipated emergency, or is it locked in at that
It
point?
would be locked in. The only way you can get it in unanticipated is if you completely cancel the project. So
Okay.
not even just temporarily move it, you'd have to cancel the project.
Are there some issues we're concerned about with the unanticipated?
I'm just thinking about temporary work that's needed at different buildings. Opens us up to not really having a lot in that 100,000 in order to do repairs to alignment if needed. That's more than we've put in the past, although last year I believe we put in 100,000, and that's more, normally we put in.
It was 50.
I guess I
So
would
it's
ask
doubled
him,
the last couple of years.
do you feel like that 100,000 is gonna be enough if something is to go at one of the elementary schools?
Well, that's hard to say because even just, you know, if the chiller is gonna be $250,000-300,000. So, you know, that's hard to say, but, you know, it's gotten us by. We just had to do some roof repairs at Lyman, which obviously we had to take, we do budget for some repairs, but then there are some unanticipated, so. We are using it. Could we live with 100,000? I think so. If something big were to go down and we needed more, we'd have to look into some kind of emergency loan. You know, which I think we can do for only up to 100,000 though. We're authorized for,
On top of what we have?
on top of what we would have, yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts? No? Other areas we wanted to, like, because we don't have a specific area today that we want to either revisit or.
I think there's a good chunk of things we need to revisit, outside of just.
Kim, you said we're gonna get the bids for the paving on Friday. So you'll know if this is, we have enough.
Yeah, I won't know how much is coming from the culvert grant, but,
When do we, you're just estimating that it's gonna be $300,000 or $400,000 left over from the culvert.
Correct.
We have to vote to move that. No.
you do have to vote to move that. I put it for 3.8, doesn't have to be 3.8, it can be 3.22 if we wanted to wait, you know, the next meeting, but yeah, we'd need a board vote.
Can they vote without it being an exact number?
No. It's a bond thing they have to move money from, right?
It's a bond, yeah, you know, we probably could structure the vote to be whatever we receive from the culvert grant. And then it would have to be that exact amount, but unless I get an exact amount before that.
Yeah.
I think we could do a motion that said whatever the amount is, we'd move over it. Two other things I just wanted to know, on town allocations with the reduction down with the health insurance and the electricity, Durham's, share, increase from last year was reduced by 92,000 and Middlefields was decreased by 50,000 with those two, reductions.
I think with the capital, the two things that we, again, you don't have to decide tonight, obviously you're not voting, is our commitment to being at 2% and trying to stay there moving forward. We got a good ways there last year, didn't get quite there just with everything. And also these projects are all the priorities we think, and that we just need to get this next phase of Picket Lane done if we can. Seems to be like everyone thinks we need to do that. So this being at 2% helps us do that.
We also have the contingency from the bonding, Bob, so that if the culvert grant, which it will be, but if the culvert grant came in to be not enough, we would use that. If at the end of the bonding projects and everything's done, we still have that contingency left, we just use that to pay back the bond.
I don't know, I don't know if everyone has access to it. We received course enrollments for this current year, 2022-2023, which is what we asked for last meeting. If you look at that along with the course offerings.
What email is that sent through? Remember?
It came from. I believe
I think Deb
Stone.
spends with that
So
maybe yesterday.
Linda, are you there? Linda?
Yes, still here.
So Linda and I had gone over a few of these,
yeah,
and I don't know if Linda, you want to give like a little bit more history on what you think class sizes would be normal for certain loads of grade levels.
Well, actually, as I was looking at it, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I think,
we didn't do it.
you know, can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, just checking. I think that, you know, the math and science numbers appear low. But the other numbers are really, I mean, yeah, it must be nice, but like, they're not absurdly low. I would say that some of the math and science, teacher loads are pretty low. And again, like what we said the last time was, by collapsing some of the levels, I suspect you could, like, I don't think it would have a huge impact on the size of some of the classes. Like, it would make them absurdly large.
You're talking about collapsing those 3 tracks.
Right.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like I believe in collapsing to none, but I also understand it's a huge step. But and I don't know that any of that is appropriate for next year. But I think that was a very valuable data to get, especially, like I said, nothing's really way out of whack, in my opinion. And then the math and science potentially, I think. And AP classes are going to be small, and they should, and not should be, but like, that's okay. That happens everywhere. I guess that's it for now.
Some questions I have, and I don't know, we don't have Deb here or Katie. Trying to figure out what actually might go ask us. Why is SAT prep leaving for 2023, 2024? We know it's not being offered. It says SAT prep not running 23, 24.
I don't know that answer, but we'll ask them
Okay.
unless somebody else knows that answer.
And then some of the class sizes, maybe
I
this
think the
is
English
something.
teacher that was laid off was doing that last year.
Who's teaching at the show?
Us?
Diane.
No, well, she was doing math, but no, there was a English teacher. I forget her name.
We go back to those. Moving over to the other document we got on class offerings between tech and music. We did get an email, and I can read those numbers just because I think they're important to hear. Total cost for K-12 music program in the proposed budget is $657,266, not including extra duty stipends for pep band and et cetera. Total cost for 6 through 12 technology program is $265,937, which includes woodworking, robotics, and coding, but it also does not include the stipends. Tech ed in the K through 5 level, which is added to that 265,937, would be $155,520. So it does seem like we're disproportionate in what we're offering between music and technology. I'm a little concerned about the offerings between technology and music. Mostly at the middle school level. So we're looking at the 2 tech offerings, 2022, 2023. Technology and innovation class, 1 quarter per year, which is required. 1 enrichment class, 1 quarter per year required, grade 6. We know why that's only offered at grade 6 level.
I'm not sure the exact reason.
Okay.
We can
Open
find out.
studio optional, grades 6 through 8, which includes the learner choice activities and available during tutorial time. This seems to be passes that are being given for kids at this grade level, and not the entire 6th or 8th grade. STEM club, I don't believe is running this year for grade 6, and robotics club optional grade 6 through 8 is also not running.
Yeah, I think that one of the questions I would have is, we have all these offerings, which one of them, we can't tell which ones are not running this year. I mean, they may be offered, but they may not be running.
At the high school level, under technology, EMT training, I thought that went under science elective. And photography is always been an art elective. So I would think those two at the high school would not be considered under technology. And when you take those out, we are incredibly disproportionate in technology to math. To music. Oh, sorry, guys, I have a headache today. In looking at the FTEs for it, it seems like we have not only we have music and band teacher, we have two at every single school. Is that correct, Kevin?
No, we have, for music staff at Brewster, 0.8, for music staff at Lyman, 1.0, at Memorial, 1.2, at Strong, 2, and at the high school, 2.
So there's not a chorus teacher and a band teacher at both.
Ed, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
what was that last question? I want to make sure I understood it. You say there's not,
There's not both chorus and band at every school.
no, but
Not-
there is at Strong and there
At
is. at
Strong and
Orange.
high school.
Um, where is, So I do think it's just important. I would like for to ask the administration to look through both technology and music and see if there are, whether there's any reductions that can happen within the FTEs, and whether that needs to be either taken out of the budget or restructured so that we're offering proportionate between the two programmings. And I don't have the work effort for art for the other electives. But from what I've heard, that they're pretty proportionate to what we're offering. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that one.
What's the actual request? I just want to make
The
sure. so
request
we're-
would be to analyze the music FTE.
The FTEs for music compared to technology.
Yes.
Okay.
The STEM club is running. The sixth grade has enrichment because it's a part of their language rotation. So that's a scheduling.
So it's not technology.
What's not?
It's part of their language rotation.
The enrichment you're talking about, it's a part of so it falls in the rotation with their language classes. So they're it's in the same rotation when they did this master schedule.
Like the same wheel.
They're only doing
like-
technology during that. That's only technology.
Lindsay, I'm sorry, what two classes did you think need to be moved to the art category?
Photography and EMT training.
I'm sorry, and what else?
EMT training
Oh,
and
EMT.
photography.
EMT science.
I think that's all because they're under the same teacher.
I understand, but it's not an offering under technology.
It was my understanding when the enrichment teacher was added, that that was supposed to be a position that wasn't just available for one grade or one only certain students. It was really supposed to be wide open, and I mean, it was going to take a little bit of time to spread it out, but it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. And it was going to include more students. Is that the same understanding, Bob? When we hired the enrichment teacher was hired, that it wasn't just for one grade level or one class of students. It was supposed to be broader than that.
That's strong.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was,
The enrichment teacher.
That's for school. yeah. But she retired, right?
no, there's currently
Well, there's somebody there now.
Carolyn LaRosa's in that.
Oh.
position.
We have another
Goes back
person
from
in that
maternity leave.
position.
Yeah, it was basically for, to begin some enrichment and talented and gifted kind of programs were all set for the whole school.
For the whole
Yeah,
school, right?
Lucy and
This is the
Lindsay, it's
second
my
year.
understanding that enrichment person works with kids in grades 6, 7, and 8. So it's a school-wide enrichment.
Okay,
program.
because that's not the way it's indicated here. It just says sixth grade, required sixth grade.
I think that's a required class,
Yeah.
but there are additional times during the day when that individual will service 7th and 8th graders as well.
Memorial also.
And there is, she's at Memorial as well.
An advisory, tutorial, or in a classroom.
I think she works in different settings, Lindsay. I think she will work in collaboration with the regular education teacher. I think she will work in a self-contained setting with 2 or 3 kids. To
So
work
it
on.
almost seems like a modified coach.
Modified coach, I think in some ways, but I think, she works with kids in areas of interest, which is a huge motivator for kids at the middle school level. And I think she also supports classroom instruction with specific, teachers in those areas. So I think her role at Strong is multifaceted.
Do you guys know, can you find out for sure?
We can find out for
Okay,
sure.
because I know it sounds good, but yeah. Too bad the
What does the
administration-
enrichment look like at elementary schools? I know it says STEAM enrichment here, but.
It says frequency varies by school and grade level.
Right, and what I've heard from my own child was enrichment is like extra library or extra art.
Yeah, I can get that
We can
information.
get
From
that.
my understanding,
'Cause this
that
is STEAM.
this individual does some work in the 5th grade. With the lower levels, it's a little bit more problematic, and I think the reason of that is developmentally with the younger elementary school kids. It's a little bit more of a challenge to get them to work on individual projects and things of that nature, and especially when there's a whole class emphasis in the lower grade levels.
Yeah, I would just like to see more offered, they're doing 4 classes of music a week between band and chorus. And, you know. that's all.
They have 4 periods per week.
Yeah.
At Memorial,
At Memorial.
so it's chorus.
It's full band, they're pulled from a class for the smaller instruction. Chorus, which is, I'm assuming everybody, and then music, which is a smaller class.
General music, yeah. Wow.
And once that goes to Strong, that goes just to band and chorus, I believe. That makes sense.
Yes.
Isn't
And-
there also a general music in grade 6?
I believe so.
That's strong
It's for 1/4.
for 1/4.
1/4.
And my suspicion is that just carried over from when 6th grade was at Memorial. Is that probably right? I don't
Yeah,
wanna
that's my
speculate here, but yeah, so that just came over because 7th and 8th don't have that.
Anything else from that we want to touch on? Well,
No, I think the restructuring, taking a look at the offerings and perhaps doing some restructuring. Ordered in classes.
I'm sorry, I probably should have asked him this. Did you find the numbers for Strong for TI that were lowered? But it looked like in the budget line item that it was lowered.
Oh,
Are
I
complete.
didn't do it just by Strong, but I did it for the entire. You're talking about technology and music.
Yeah,
So, yeah, so I compared the last 3 years and I compared the budget for the last 3 years as opposed to actual, because sometimes you might have a staff member out on leave or whatever, and they don't exactly. So yeah, the music budget did increase, but it increased based on contractual obligations. And also in the past, and this would be true for tech ed too, but we had budgeted at 95% at a vacancy factor, and then we went to 96.5. So that showed a larger increase in salaries just because of that vacancy factor. And the more staff you have under music, obviously that increase is going to be larger than what you would have under tech ed. Because we do have, more music than tech ed staff members. And then there were some equipment purchases in 22-23 that we did not need to propose in 23-24, so that looked like that was a reduction. And there also was I mentioned the music keyboard stands, 3,500 this year for music, so that increased that line. So it's sort of just a bunch of different things, but it was the only decrease we did have was last year we did decrease a tech ed staff member when we did the staff cuts. So tech ed went from at Coggin-Chog, but it went from total district wide of 6 to 4.2 FTE. And also we have used in the past grants, mostly Merwin grant to buy lumber, equipment, and robotics competition fees. So that's not reflected in the general fund spending of tech ed.
where does any money that wasn't used this year for programs like robotics, would that roll over to next year?
No money ever rolls over. It just goes back to the general fund. And then that just doesn't get expended.
And we do not have a STEAM coordinator in district, right? That is not
Yeah.
a position that we
And that
ever
was another reason
replaced.
for the reduction in tech ed was that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah,
Now, in the past, that STEAM coordinator, what was their role in the district?
I will speak to my perspective since I've been here. I think perhaps it evolved into something that maybe was not what it was originally designed for, but when I got here, that individual, high quality professional, nothing about them, but their role seemed to be more on the tech support side, support for programs like iReady and other benchmark testing, a heavy role in testing, which is a big deal. Somebody has to do that. And also did a lot of work for the former director of curriculum, just kind of tech support for that individual. I didn't see a lot of evidence of actual in the school STEAM support. And you know, if you give me a percentage, I think especially at the secondary level. And I don't know if that's because the secondary level already had technology and robotics and things like that. But again, prior to me getting here, it may have looked different. And of course, I came in the middle of the pandemic. So I think, to be fair, that individual was pulled to do a lot of the virtual stuff that had to be thrown together at the last minute. So I think they did a very good job of that.
I can speak to prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Of what that role was, and I thought it was really beneficial. Especially as a teacher, that role was actually someone who weekly, if not daily, would send specific grade level ideas for STEAM projects and STEAM ideas for our classroom. She would take our science units and actually incorporate and put more ideas, more things in the program or in the curriculum. And then under her, there were people that would come in and actually physically model and do programs and do things STEAM related within the actual classrooms. So I don't know what happened since I worked here, but that role was very beneficial. And I feel that person would actually oversee and be sure that at each of these grade levels that a proper amount of STEAM activities and
She became a critical role during COVID to put together the technology needed for Zoom classes and remote classes. Was put into organizing all that activities and basically worked on the COVID response plan and helped develop that of how we're going to achieve classroom needs. So she was taken out of her tech role, which wasn't going on to begin with because they weren't in school, and moved into the role that was necessary at the time. But I agree with Maura that, it was an important position that we and organized the programs. The basic one, the first one was really organized, was that strong. With Tina, who came here and then went back to strong, but that's where kind of the first efforts were, and actual robotics and all that stuff was going on.
So my question on that is, it seems like I'd like to find out if the stipend positions that were created in order to do outdoor ed and STEM, are they going to be sufficient to do more than just plan? Because I feel like we've got stipends for, like, say, the DC trip and for all these other things, and it's a lot of work, but it's not day-to-day work on what they're currently doing. So I don't know if you have an indication of what those stipend individuals will be able to do in those roles.
So let's start with the outdoor ed. And we moved that. I can't remember the exact dollar amount. You remember, Kevin or Kim, from our negotiations?
Not right off the bat, no.
We'll find that.
As I look at these, the class numbers for the high school enrollment, that's for this year.
Correct.
Are those typical numbers to have student numbers in the teens and classes and is that typical for high school to have? I'm not looking at the AP classes, I'm looking at the regular ones, like Introduction to Algebra, we have 11, 14, 15 students. Is that typical at high schools or is it generally more? And I mean, I know lower grades will have more in sixth grade at 25 students. I know it's different, but
Yeah.
Seems
My
like that
context,
we
my
do have a
context
lot
as
of
a high school
sections.
teacher is very, very different and much higher, but that was in a different place where
Mhm.
we weren't as well funded as we are here. And, but I think even your point, Lucy, and I think why we wanted to bring this to your attention is even when you compare it to the class sizes in our own elementary schools,
Mhm.
there are many high school courses that have a lower enrollment than, you know, say a second grade class or something like that. Not to a class, but on the average, but many. And so that, but I don't know, others may know more about other districts around here and what high school class sizes
Typical
they
numbers.
run.
Typical numbers
Does
for high school.
anybody
I
know?
haven't taught at high school, so I don't know.
I mean, my experience and just, you know, being in different districts of different sizes of numbers of, you know, enrolled learners is that the larger the district, the larger the class size. The smaller the district, it seems to be that class sizes tend to be typically smaller.
Especially at the high school level, where if you want the breadth of elective offerings or other courses needed, you're gonna have smaller classes because, or you're gonna have to cut offerings.
There was an email that was sent out. Our next incoming class is approximately 75 students. Was that correct? I remember seeing that. I don't
That's
have
our
it.
current, that's our current ninth grade class is 75.
Our current ninth grade class. I thought this was coming in for next year for this eighth grade. It was telling how many students had gone out.
That should have been in Katie's presentation, which I think,
Says
That's
108,
probably where I saw it.
I believe, in Katie's presentation, which doesn't include the kids that will be going out.
So this year we have 75 freshmen.
75 freshmen, yeah.
Freshmen.
Well, it's increased a bit, since the beginning of the school year, 12 learners. 24 students enrolled at Cogachok, 14 formally attended RSD13. 10 were new to RSD13 and 11 students withdrew from Cogachok. So there was a
Hold on, the 23, 24, let's go up a little bit. Right here, 20 have applied. There's 103 students in the eighth grade. This is for 23, 24.
correct.
And 20 of them have already applied to other schools.
Yeah.
So that drops it down to about 80 students.
Which
Coming in next
and
year.
could be more because enrollments have not, application deadlines have not even come close to being.
I guess my question is if we have a smaller freshman class coming in, how is that going to affect these numbers in these classes? Is it not going to drop these numbers down, make them even smaller?
probably, we would know more at our next work session because the registrations will be
Mhm.
in at that point.
Okay.
That's why we didn't have the principals here because
Okay, so
we
we'll
will,
look
we
at
will
it
come
again.
back on any of these
Alright.
issues. And make recommendations. If I could ask though, I want to make sure of the one question that was asked of us about reconfiguring and things like that. We specifically talked about technology and music. Are you all asking us to not offer everything in music that we're currently offering? Is that what you want us to consider? Because I didn't hear that last time and I didn't
No, we're
even
not
hear that.
saying
I
that,
didn't
just
hear that
asking you to
today.
analyze it and look at
Are you asking us to increase technology?
if it's possible, if
Okay.
it's something that we have, if it's a cut we have to make due to budget reasons, then that's something we should know. If it's something we can reallocate, that's something we should
Okay.
know.
No, I think that gives us something to work with. And again, I just wanted to be clear that it was specifically in those two areas and
No,
kind
we
of,
obviously not want, like,
because they're both related arts and.
we don't want to affect programming, but if our programming is disproportionate between the two, then that's something you
it
really
is.
need. All right.
It is
I understand
disproportionate. I
that.
think that's,
So
I
that
think
needs to
there's
be
no
analyzed
question
and
of that.
figured out how we can best.
Then I guess, let me just be very specific. Do you want us to come back with a recommendation that may change the budget to try to achieve that, even if it increases the budget, because it might. Again, we haven't done it yet, but
We could do that analysis along with an analysis if we were just to make it equal and reallocate it.
And a few scenarios to offset, maybe an increase there, maybe offset by something.
Yeah.
For 1 second, let's get the best of like. a
No,
few
but
scenarios that
we'd
could go.
love to make a recommendation that does all that. It's just, when I hear reallocate, I'm thinking reallocate staffing, and if you're gonna reallocate, say,
No, I meant funds.
funds, okay.
And I think when you look at the programming, not to eliminate programming, but perhaps especially, let's take music, for instance, restructuring it in such a way that there's still the same offerings, but they're offered in a different way so that maybe they don't have as much time, they're offered differently, but they're
Yeah.
still there.
I think one of the
I think
things
real
that
creative.
we've talked about extensively in the last few days in generating this information for you all in anticipation of this and future work sessions is, and I think Amanda brought it up, or somebody did, that when we get into grade 3, we've introduced chorus as a mandatory section on top of general music. And this is happening at Lyman and also at Memorial, continues into 4th and 5th grade and becomes an elective offering, correct me if I'm wrong, once they get to 6th grade. Band starts as an elective in 4th grade at Lyman and Memorial. So, to Amanda's point, the learners who are electing the instrumental band program are doing that, the general music, and the chorus. So, we've talked about maybe the comparison on the funding side, the numbers that Kim presented, but you also have in your other handout, just kind of like on a per week basis or whatever, how much folks are getting. And so this is why I'm asking, and I'm not pinning you down here. I just,
Yeah.
are you
Mhm.
asking us to reconsider doing those things, which have been tradition here for a while?
Hey, Linda.
Or at this moment, or do you just want some different options in that?
I feel like looking at the ceiling and talking to you is weird. Are you there?
I am God.
Okay. Listen, you can interrupt at any moment. You don't have to be. called
I know, but my mama raised me right. It just didn't take. Yeah, so I wanted to throw a couple thoughts out. One is, the question that Lucy had about the numbers being typical or not. And then I'm sorry, I can see backs of heads, but other than that, I agree that in small districts, it's a real balancing act between the electives we offer and class size. I would say that part of I'm going to talk about sacrifice and choices with the music program too in a second, but I think that there are going to be times that high school students have to prioritize and they're going to have to make a decision. We can't offer X class we can only offer it up against band. We can only offer it up against AP Calc, and the kids are going to have to choose. I went to a very small school. They did some things that were interesting in order to keep class sizes up. Juniors and seniors were in all of the same English and social studies classes, and they rotated it. So you did US history one year and world history the next. And that helped with staffing. I think with the limited amount of time I've had with the numbers, there's probably some electives that could be let go for the sake of class sizes and total teacher load. So that's just one thought. The other thought is going to music. I didn't realize that chorus was mandatory. That's fascinating to me, that if you're in band, you also have to be in chorus. To me, so the argument of saying, no, by middle school, if you're in band, you shouldn't be in a general music class, right? And then one of the arguments against that stance is that then the general music classes are filled with kids who are not interested in music and they become very challenging. that can be correct, but you can then change the curriculum. Some schools are doing all electronic music. Some schools are doing teaching the kids how to play guitar or keyboard or something that those general music classes are engaging, more engaging for kids who are not interested in band or chorus. And I'm sure, you know, we have a tendency to let schedules drive programs or schedules drive curriculum rather than the curriculum and driving the schedule. And it feels to me, having no idea really, but the idea of everyone taking chorus is to either save a program that was struggling, or because scheduling wise, it was something that really needed to be done to balance out the schedule. And although I understand that, it behooves us, and who am I kidding? It ain't gonna be me. It behooves someone to put the extra time and you know, the creative out of the box thinking to figure out how to make it work so that that doesn't necessarily happen. Thank you. That is all.
And I'd like to agree with Linda about the schedule challenges, primarily at the elementary level around all of the related arts and making this work as I understand it. And again, you guys interrupt me if I'm saying the wrong thing. Whereas the general music classes are kind of generally the size of the typical classroom and they rotate through. When they go to chorus, it's like the whole 5th grade goes together. So you actually gain efficiency in the schedule because now that teacher is taking all of the 5th graders at one time, which, you know, kudos to music teachers. I don't know that I could do that, but so it actually supports other parts of the schedule in terms of giving those grade level teachers time to collaborate and be in their professional learning communities and things like that. But that being said, that's exactly what Linda's talking about. That is the schedule more kind of driving what we do. Having said all that, I just want to be clear that in my understanding, we've been doing this with chorus for a long time here. And so I don't know what people generally feel in terms of the value is to that on top of instrumental band, on top of general music. But also to say that if there was an idea to maybe eliminate chorus as a mandatory thing, we'd actually need more staff at that point in 3, 4, and 5, because then those kids that weren't electing into it, we would need to have a teacher available for them to do something else. Now, if we eliminated it completely, then yes, then you could save on the music offerings, but that would be that program change. And that's why I wanted to make sure where people kind of were with even having those kind of conversations. Because I know when we even talk about any program changing in any way, some people get very upset and nervous and you know, we want to honor that too.
Well,
Part of this, you know, the character of the district has been music. I mean, that's been probably one of the leading definitions of the school has been of, you know, the importance of the music program throughout, you know, all 4 years. The high school.
It's so
and-
concerning though, Bob, because we're not a music academy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the
I don't
history
even know where that started from.
and that, you know, it's been a, you know, mainstay of the district for decades.
I think it's something we really have to look into, because I have a student, my daughter is the shyest child ever. She hates chorus. She doesn't want to do it. She's forced to do it. She loves band, but she's being pulled out of a class each week for a small session for band. She's missing math every single week. That's kind of concerning.
And she's not the only one I know.
No, and
I'm
I mean,
sure.
she's in 4th grade, but she lost a good 2 years. You know, all these kids are behind. We shouldn't put the focus on instruments and chorus. 4 classes a week for band and chorus. When she has 1 tech class, 3 science classes a week, she's getting more music than she has science.
Well, I think the hard thing is too, is we've got, you know, kids start with it at a very young age and I think it's wonderful and they keep moving on with it and they keep going, but how many kids are we losing their passion very young because we're not offering them that passion? We're offering them band or chorus. You know, we say optional in 4th grade for band, but I've specifically seen the emails that go out and it doesn't say it's optional. It says, you know, your student came and chose three different instruments, and from that we'll put together a band based on, fluency between the programs. As a parent, to me, it looks like it's just the next step from where they are, as opposed to saying like, what are you most passionate about? Do you have a passion for robotics or working with your hands other than music? You've got a large special needs population that cannot do band. Or that don't feel comfortable, or it's just out of their comfort zone and not something that they're going to get into.
And I agree. And I think, again, it's hard to see on this tiny little thing, but I think it was Amanda was saying how, we have, and education has for decades honored the extrovert. And kids who are introverted don't have the opportunities that kids who are extroverted do. And so technology is one of those places where students who are more introverted have the opportunity to still, shine or learn and be involved in a project and not have to stand up in front of a whole bunch of people, especially if I just think of kids who can't sing. It's a talent. And I think, oh crap, I was going to say something else and it's gone. It's weird to be on Zoom.
It'll come back.
Yeah, it will. All right. Thank you.
That's a valid point.
I think we're spending a lot of time and effort to focus or to move into learner-centered education. That's going to be a major shift from what we're looking at now. So to make some of these little changes, I don't think is really out there. It's a gradual shift and a movement into something that we're moving towards anyway. And
How do you
we're not
know
just
that,
going to walk
Lucia?
in one day and it's learner-centered is there. It's going to be a gradual shift.
How do you know that?
Pardon?
How do you know that? I'm
How
just
do I know
wondering,
what?
how do you know that this is a gradual shift towards that?
Restructuring some of the music programs? Is that what you mean? That's
How,
what I'm talking
how do you
about.
know that learner centered, like we're gradually shifting that way?
That's what we're looking at this point.
I
That's
just
what
don't
we've
see
been
anything
discussing.
concrete that shows that that's where we're moving with it. I can't pull this up too, but it was what Deb Stone brought up. Has to be the one that she sent. It's for some reason is freezing. But it did look at, like, if you look at the music, I mean, again, I think that it's a really important program, but there really aren't a ton of kids there are so many students I feel that are not part of the music program when you look at the numbers. So I do agree that I think that there's a huge group that really, who is not part of the music, needs to have more offerings and electives. And, especially with the freshman class that's coming in, that's really low. I think that's I think it was Linda who mentioned that one too, but I would think that would be a great place to start with, reducing or seeing how to make those classes more concise, because we can't have classes with 5 or 6 kids in them. But I would think, especially if they were math or science classes that's happening in for this incoming with this freshman class, that it's a perfect alignment. There's a math and the science teacher. So perhaps instead of all of the classes with 5 or 6 kids, we could condense those, and those teachers could then offer more electives that are part of the STEAM program.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's without hiring, that's
a
restructuring
restructuring.
without having to spend more money. That's just getting creative with what we have. So,
And
I
I
mean,
think-
that's just an example of the high school, I think.
And I think Linda's words too, and I can't take credit for it, Linda, but, clearly we're not keeping kids in the district by offering more music
Right.
than others. We're losing kids, and we keep talking about why or how, and all different opinions, but it's clear that it's not music that's keeping us here.
No, I think it's half of the numbers. It's
The.
Kelly, I think the last 2 out of the last 3 valedictorians are all in music. They all went on to a music college.
Takes a lot of dedication to go that far with music, I think it's indicative of what we're offering.
Right. or emphasis.
It's important to note that students that are very into it also have a lot of other opportunities outside of Cogachugga. They want to do things outside of our program as well. So it's not like those opportunities don't exist for kids that really want to pursue it as well. And I'm a big supporter of the music as well. No doubt about it. Yeah, probably disagree at the putting them all into one puddle in fourth grade because, yes, I've heard it over and over again. Yeah, it's not for everybody, not for every kid. And,
I would be interested to see the numbers, and Jamie probably should see it. How many kids weren't able to continue in fourth grade when COVID hit with band? Because they just had gotten their first instrument. And now they're in sixth or seventh. So how many of the seventh graders are currently actually in band
I have that number.
in comparison to the pre-pandemic?
6 and 7 are quite low. I can give you the exact, if you let me pull up the, if I find that,
Yeah. Because they just started.
in one of my docs here.
I also think we want to make sure nobody panics. I think, especially in the high school level, I don't think we're necessarily talking about eliminating, with a wide swath, right? I think what we're talking about is just looking at how can we optimize learning time. And so if you're looking at some of the music programs that are mandatory and are taking the place of other potential coursework, other potential, whether it be intervention, whether it be, allowing the kids to choose something that they are interested in rather than being forced into a particular class. I think, to Bob's point, the kids who are going to be music majors still have the opportunity to get at Cogachugga a lot of those experiences. And yes, there's stuff outside too, but I know I'm personally like, I don't think that, we should be cutting any particular band, right? I think that the idea is how can we balance those electives so that those kids who are passionate about music still have those opportunities, but so that kids who really don't care aren't forced to do it.
And I think you're right too, Linda, and I think that part of that is, again, I think we talk at the lower middle school, upper middle school level, because even looking at the robotics course up at the high school, where, Diane Walsh had 8 kids in it. Did she have 8 kids because they weren't exposed to it in middle school?
No,
on anything other than a club level?
She has 8 kids because of the materials and the supplies that she has available to her. So she can't really expand much further than that just because.
So we had more that wanted to be in there. We capped it at 8.
That I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they had more interest than that, but I do know in talking with her that that was kind of the number that she was able to take just because of the equipment that she had available.
And not necessarily for that course, but just to repeat what we went over last time. Deb and Katie have now set some floors on electives and given those expectations to the department heads and the teachers, where I think in the past, there's been more of a, I don't know, I don't want to say it's loose, but just more of a culture. We'll run this elective in the single digits, and that would be okay. And I think the message has been, there needs to be some recruiting, some active recruiting of the learners to make the classes, because I think that's the other piece of this, is that a lot of times at a high school especially, you offer, the kids sign up, but then what you actually have in terms of courses is somewhat related to enrollments. And
So I
so,
think that's what's important. I'd like to know how many kids signed up for robotics, but couldn't do it. I'd like to find a remedy for that. Also like to know if there are any students that signed up for any music course that were denied due to funding. Because we cannot,
materials.
right, we cannot have a program running that doesn't have materials in order to take on the kids that are passionate about that. It goes against anything that I've ever learned about education in this whole process. if we want to move on from there.
Did we want to, kind of wrap it up around 6 or what time is the?
We do,
6:30?
6:02.
We still have to talk about
Okay,
coaches and interventionists, and I'd like to talk about the possible cut for,
I know we're gonna be revisiting staff and that's gonna be coming up again. You'll also be talking about it at maybe not. Where did you want to go?
I guess the only thing I would really want, because I think it's important to look at between now and the 22nd, would be the position at Strong for the coordinator of student affairs. I know that this position, and we talked about it extensively last meeting, but enough, that was brought on when the kids came to Strong. It seems to indicate that this position is actively engaging with each and every sixth grade parent. I'd like to find that out because from what I can tell, that isn't the case. And I'm having a hard time understanding whether an assistant principal like position is appropriate for the middle school with the enrollment that's currently there. The restorative practices, I know we have another person in that building that was also trained in restorative practices. Creating an overall positive school culture in which we provide students the skills, knowledge, and experiences to succeed academically and socially, I believe falls under every teacher, as well as heavy on guidance and social work. Reaching out to the parents of sixth graders to develop a relationship with the family and the child. To my knowledge, that's not happening unless there's, issues. Managed truancy, I don't know who normally handles that in the school, who handles that at the elementary school level where they don't have an assistant principal. Coordinate school events. I'm not sure what school events that is. Most of the school events at that middle school level are done by the PTO. And student supervision, I know that there's part of it, overseeing lunch duty or duties in general. And I would think that we can, with the amount of tutorials and blocks, that we should be able to allocate enough people to do student supervision. So I would ask that that position be looked at.
Any other thoughts,
Yeah,
questions?
I mean, I would agree, if this is just like a.
And don't get me wrong, I find this individual to be amazing. I just think that the role itself is, I mean, we're currently looking at a $93,000 amount that,
Plus factor in benefits.
plus benefits, yeah.
Right, and there was never an assistant principal prior to this.
No, I mean, it did increase the numbers to Strong when sixth grade obviously went to Strong, but I don't at this point with declining enrollment and what the job description says really fulfills a need at that point other than really help within administration.
I think you had a good point too, as far as the SRO. A lot of what you just described was, to me, I thought was the reasoning for the SRO also to be involved in with the kids. I think you had chess club and interacted and dealt a lot with truancy and behavior problems. So I just would wonder too, what the difference was or why we needed someone in addition.
Yeah. And I'm not sure where in the SRO contract it's, we're able to enable that, so. Officer Helton would have more time to be able to be at that level. Again, I don't think that's for us to really go through.
We,
Wasn't
Kim
that
gave us the
originally
MOU
put
for the
in?
SRO.
Bob, wasn't that originally put in, we talked about having someone at the middle school when the sixth graders were going up there?
That's
For
that
someone to
position.
help with transition
It's been like a couple of
at
years
the
ago.
time?
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah, several
position.
years.
Yeah. That was originally.
I just asked for more information on that. And if it is, if we don't have the right idea of what is currently happening, then.
Okay.
That would help. Something I think that we should talk about next budget workshop. Maura had talked extensively, and I had too, about increasing the intervention for the kids that really are being identified as needing it. And I know that, people have looked at the coaches and said, what the coaches really done, what they really need to do. We have some of the most amazing staff that are our coaches, and I'm wondering if part of that coaching position, while still keeping it, could allocate some of it to one-on-one, or even small groups, getting more back to the intervention portion of it rather than fully on the coaching portion. But again, if we want to revisit that.
Like a coaching / interventionist.
Yeah. And then I did want to point out too, looking at this week, we did, Kim had given numbers of districts that had come back budget wise, and we're all frustrated looking at numbers that are over, even 3.5%, 3% at this point. But it does seem to be trending now that the districts like us that aren't getting the funding that larger districts are getting, the grants that we get denied for all add up, and that's what ends up having to go in our budget. So I think it was, might have been North Branford was just over 5.8.
Oh, 8.9.
8.9, and then Branford was five,
Just shy of 6.
just shy of 6.
I have, this was as of yesterday, but my CASBO group that reports, plus Doug had given me some percentages that he discussed it with his superintendent meeting, but the total average of the districts recording for the state is a 3.61. The total average of all regionals is 6.44, and the total of our DERG-C is 4.83.
But of those,
4.83.
have they recognized their enrollment and made the changes necessary over the past years to do that, to get them to that position where they can make that budget? Whereas we're not there because of where we're at, the redistricting schools that are still open. So we're in a different situation. I keep saying this, we're in a different situation if we have schools that are closed.
I think when you're seeing it with regional
100%.
districts too, I think you're looking at like a power between, each town has a lot of power. And that's something we've really had, not us, but former boards had to deal with. I think when it comes down to it, you look at what Wallingford did this week. They're combining Sheehan and Lyman. They're one town. So they just made the decision and they're gonna go and do it. It's harder for us. It's a longer process. Shouldn't be this long, unfortunately, but hopefully we can get to that. But I did want everyone to understand that it does seem like that is what is happening with the regional districts. And we need to keep a really big eye on it. We need to advocate. We need to talk to CAVE. We need to get to these legislative hearings, and we need to advocate for our little towns, because if we're not getting the funding, our kids aren't getting the education. And if we're increasing every year, like every other regional district, people aren't going to afford to live here anymore. So.
Kim, do we ever any more on the school lunch
It's
money?
free.
I mean,
Well,
As of today.
it's free until the end of June, where more COVID federal ARPA money was allocated to states. But there's a House bill that did get pushed on to the next level, where the lunch would be free forever. And it would really kind of fall on
for it.
the locality, and it's favoring higher income districts to pay out of their local taxes and supplement lower income towns.
So that becomes another unfunded.
Yeah, it's an
mandate.
unfunded mandate.
Yes,
And how much, you gave us a figure
It
of
was
how much that would
$600.
cost.
I was seeing about
I thought it
300
was
to
about
400,000. I have it here.
We were worried about increasing it to $4 a meal.
I know.
And you saw what happened with that.
I
No one
know,
no one was buying lunch, everyone was bringing
I
their own
didn't want
lunch,
to increase it.
and we lost money on that.
Yeah, but I want to say, I remember it about 3 to 400,000. It was, so it would increase our budget by 1%.
That's just for lunch.
Yeah.
Then I know, and last thing before I think we can go would be to honor, last meeting, we did discuss and want to look at some central office reductions and where those possibly could happen.
To piggyback with that too, though, I'm just gonna throw out there that I still strongly feel that I'd like to see in the budget, and I don't know if anybody else on the board feels like, at least in this budget, or in future budgets, that we need a director of curriculum instruction and assessment.
I agree. That's why I asked the.
Yeah. That's an
You
important,
did, that's
yeah,
right.
important position.
And I don't know when we have more further discussion about that. I don't know if this is the time or the place,
I mean, we can certainly have that discussion here.
or like you said too, with the staffing. I mean, this is stuff we all brought up last week already. But when do we?
I think it's a hard
Yeah.
conversation to have in the current space that we're in right now. And I do agree. I think it's hard to know that we're not writing curriculum and we're in a space with the strategic plan where we don't know where we're gonna be with it. So I think it's important to evaluate. Maybe we can look over it on the 22nd. In conjunction with some conversations. You okay with that?
Yeah, I think what I've given this some thought since the last meeting. I think what you're bumping into here and what you have to consider is to what extent do you believe that it's primarily my responsibility to organize the district, to execute the work. And we could even extend that to some of the school levels with some of the things we've talked about, to where we feel like our principals are in the best position to assess that versus you all as a group kind of deciding that. So I do think we need to give some thought around that. Especially because we made some moves with the board's support, and now it seems like we may want to go in a different direction, but I'm open to it. If, you know, I just think we'd have to be clear. And then even with some of the things we talked about tonight, and that's why thank you for entertaining a lot of my kind of clarifying questions. Some of these I think are budget, and some of them really aren't budget. They're kind of structural, programmatic, that might be budget neutral on some level. And so
The possibility of it, but
Yeah,
we
we
did
talk-
want to
talk
look
ab-
at
Yeah.
the reason we asked for it was because of the budget, but if you were doing it at the same time, it would be nice to see what it would look like in a restructuring as well.
And I think it's also important to remember that the Board of Education is responsible for student achievement. And all of these, most of these issues that we're bringing up affect student achievement. So we're kind of almost have like an overlapping role in these decisions and these issues. So we're trying to find a happy medium and some results as well. Do we want to, it's 6:15, I believe there's a game at 6:30.
Six, going on right
Six.
now.
Oh, it started already. Okay, so maybe we can adjourn at this point and then bring up some of these topics again at our next budget meeting, March 22nd.
And I do have a bunch of notes on
Got
what we want to
something else?
continue for the 22nd as well, where we want clarifying questions. So Doug, if you have any questions on those, we can.
could you, I mean, I think I have them written down, but could
But
you
I'll give
email me
yeah,
those?
I'll email
That would be
my
great.
notes too.
And I think a lot of the principals are watching, because I know I've gotten a couple texts from a few of them, but I don't try to relay that in this setting. I think it's better to have them here.
No, I
or-
think it's important to have
Yeah.
these notes too. That way,
Yeah.
you know, we're
Yep,
not
agreed.
getting something that, you know, we're confused on. So.
Yep.
we appreciate it. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thanks, Linda.
You.
Thanks, everyone. Miss you.
The game, stay for the concert. Be glad you have a parking spot.